true personal growth ultimately will lead to fulfillment. And it's my intention with these podcasts to connect more deeply with you. Thank you for joining me and Corbin and my guests, and welcome to this episode. My brother and I went to different schools. Mine was in the centre of town, so my friends were spread all over the city, but his was local and it was co-ed. Unfortunately, I was just that little bit too old to get in because it was a new school and it was growing as the age intake of the kids grew, the school grew with them. So, he had a load of local friends, and he also belonged to something called YP, which I think stood for Youth Parish. And I believe it was run by American missionaries. It was a sort of an after-school club. And most likely these folks came from the Bible Belt in the States. And as well as having a lot of fun, such as going camping and having campfires at night, generally doing the sort of things that kids enjoy, there was also a fair bit of Bible or scripture content. And one day he came home talking about the rapture. Well, to a family of Catholics, this was a completely unknown subject. But in a nutshell, there is apparently a prediction that in the so-called end times, 3/4 or 7/8 of the population of the earth will suddenly and inexplicably disappear. This will happen just before all the scary stuff described in Revelations, when the Antichrist rules the earth and no one without the mark of the beast will be able to buy or sell anything, and so on. The interpretation is that all the good or the righteous people will be removed from the physical plane and gathered up by God, whilst those left behind will have to cope with everything that's foretold in Revelations. And, well, because of my ongoing but admittedly passing interest in this subject, I began reading a series called Left Behind several years ago. It was written by a couple of Americans. And, well, there are 7 books in the series. And to be honest, I gave up because probably shortage of time, my favourite war cry. But perhaps even then, I was developing my preference for non-fiction. So, for most of my life, I've had an awareness of the rapture, but I have been very short on detail, and to be honest, I haven't gone looking for it. But occasionally it has come up in conversation, and I'm sure I recall someone fairly well versed in Bible knowledge saying that the rapture isn't even in the Bible. Well, it is, but as with most of the Bible, you need an interpreter. Today, unexpectedly, I got the reference delivered as part of something else I was reading online. It's 1 Corinthians 52, verse 15. And it goes like this: "In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed." And it goes on, "For this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality." You see what I mean about needing an interpreter? Well, I wasn't intentionally reading anything about scripture. It was, in fact, a rather fascinating series of articles about Nikola Tesla and his connection with time travel. The writers of the articles are connecting Tesla's experiments on electromagnetism with the Schumann resonance, time travel, the Trump family, Q, Tesla himself, and the rapture. So remember, Tesla was the genius scientist who wanted to give mankind free energy, who fell foul of the robber barons by being too honest. He got them to finance one of his projects, and once they realized what he wanted to offer mankind, not only did they withdraw financing, but they made sure that nobody else financed him ever again. And the people I'm referring to are the robber barons such as Edison, Westinghouse, and banker J.P. Morgan. So Tesla ended his life living more or less in poverty, we're told, in a residential hotel called the New Yorker in New York. And Tesla was practically airbrushed from history as a result of their actions, and people of my generation never heard of him at school because other people for decades had taken credit for his numerous inventions. And also those robber barons had, well, as I mentioned earlier, they'd seen to it that finance would be comprehensively withheld, and therefore Tesla couldn't carry out most of his major experiments. They knew that if free electricity were generally available, then a huge portion of their own income would simply disappear. As for Tesla himself, he had no interest in amassing a fortune. He was a devout Christian and a genuine altruist, the polar opposite of those so-called philanthropists from that day to this, most of whom could more accurately be called philanthropaths. And I didn't make up that word, but, well, I forget where I learned it recently, but I really like it. And of course I'm referring to Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller, even Henry Ford. They are all remembered for being philanthropists as well as very, very, very rich men. And they are not responsible only for good. So it appears that Tesla discovered time travel accidentally when experimenting with his electromagnetism. Now, I have to say that this particular rabbit hole of time travel is one that I haven't been down before, but time travel has always intrigued me, and I'm not presenting this podcast as fact, naturally. But as theories go, it could be up there with the best of them. What I can't explain is why this information that connects so many snippets and other popular theories, it seems only to be known by a select few who aren't talking about it, apart from amongst themselves. Maybe it just sounds too crazy. But I now recognise that there have been hints here and there. So if you're still with me, don't go anywhere as I summarise the main points, but sorry, not the detail, there just isn't time, and it might get a bit tedious. But this might be some of the best news that I've heard for a long time regarding the future. Any sci-fi time travel that you've seen will have told you that a future version of a person must not, if he travels in time, contact his past or contemporary self, nor do anything that would affect the space-time continuum, to quote from that, those Back to the Future films. Neither of those two statements is true. Tesla was a genius, no question, and effectively silencing him 100 years ago and making mankind dependent on those so-called fossil fuels has choked off the development of science. So we're as much as a century behind where we ought to be. And when Tesla discovered time travel, he sent himself into the future. Now, I don't know when he did this, but he went way into the future. And because what he saw horrified him, that he went back into the past in further experiments and collected a younger version of himself and brought that version back to whatever timeline he was in at the time. Now, he died in 43, so it would have been sometime before 1943. As a result of this, there is a Tesla alive today. And of course, the one that's alive and working today could still have nipped back in time and collected another younger version if time, if his mortal self was becoming too old. But the important theory is that there is a Tesla still alive today and working with the white hats. And those are the good guys who work with the US military and Trump and so on. Now, because of the double dealing and bully boy tactics that Tesla had experienced from banker J.P. Morgan and the various other robber barons, Tesla made sure that he didn't ever apply for patents for his time travel inventions, and this is why they are not generally known about. He knew that he had to find someone knowledgeable and trustworthy with whom he could share his secrets and entrust that person with the safekeeping of his information. And very specifically, there was a secret coil winding technique, which is apparently integral to this time travel stuff. And it happened, possibly by divine ordinance, that he met and befriended John G. Trump, who was considerably younger, but very definitely aligned with Tesla's values and principles. So Trump, Tesla, plus somebody Van de Graaff, were pioneers in particle acceleration and ionizing radiation. Trump and Tesla, in time, were involved in the design of that New Yorker hotel, where Tesla ended his days, which very unusually has an enormous power plant built into its basement. And there is a theory that the whole building is a time travel machine. So Tesla ended up dying there in 1943, as I said earlier. He was a frail old man of 86, but he was very into healthcare, and I think he was a vegetarian in the very, very early days, long before it was popular. But the person that he entrusted to go through his papers was John Trump. And Trump saw to it that he was authorized or instructed by the FBI to go through Tesla's papers. And you've probably guessed the connection. John Trump was Donald Trump's uncle. So as John G. was famous in his own right for his contributions to nuclear medicine, perhaps the question arises, were he and Tesla secretly working in collaboration? A certain John Titor was apparently a time traveller. His name will be known to time travel fans who are in appropriate groups on Facebook. Heavens, do you know, it's never crossed my mind to even look for such groups, but I struggled to keep up because I have such a busy life outside of social media. Tita's story is that he was working for the military in 2036 and was sent back to 1975 to locate an IBM 5100 computer. In 2036, there was devastation from civil war, corruption, and a nuclear attack. And Tita was under orders to return straight back to 2036, but undertook an unauthorized sojourn in 1999, apparently to deliver a warning. We're told that he posted prolifically, and posting wasn't a thing back in 1999, but in some circles, I guess it was. He posted prolifically, and he gave many interviews between 1999 and March 2001. And his final post finished with, "I will be leaving this world line shortly, and this will be my final post." When you return to the timeline that you've left, no matter how much time you spend away, only a second or so passes in the original timeline. And we know that all time is happening now. The different dimensions are what keep the timelines separate, and maybe they're all simulations. This kind of science I do not profess to understand. I just accept that it makes a certain kind of sense. We know that we've been lied to for centuries, and it's only gotten worse in the past 50 years. Good people who have attempted to publicize the truth or aspects of it have found only small numbers of converts who, in turn, tend to be dismissed as nutcases or conspiracy theorists by the majority or the sheep or the steadfastly asleep, also known as normies. Oh, and how many times have you thought, is this really all there is? And heard comments like, it was never meant to be like this. As knowledge increases due to the internet, and also more and more is leaking out about the truth of our situation on Earth, us being the so-called Adamic bloodline, the Great Awakening is gathering pace. Much of the truth is very dark indeed, and there's little doubt that we are in the end times. The situation in America is unbelievable. A senile puppet president, controlled by the deep state, corruption, crime, poverty, drug abuse, all at record levels, crazy numbers of illegal immigrants. And apart from the senile president comment, that statement is reflected in most countries in the West. So what is the glimmer of good news amongst the negativity and increasing threats that we're facing? As I've been attempting to summarise all the connected theories, facts and recent phenomena even, it has become apparent that I need more than one podcast to present the whole picture. Regular listeners will know that in the past I have occasionally spread a story over 2 weeks, so the main decision I had to make, really, is in what order information should be arranged. I've been relating what I think could be a plausible connection between time travel, science, Tesla, the Trump family, and a prophecy from the Bible. And I give credit to Jetson White for educating me via his YouTube channel on these connections. So much is hidden from us, but it's amazing how much is known about by enthusiasts outside of what the legacy media allow us to digest as general knowledge. So I really hope that you choose to join me next week for part 2 of Tesla, time travel, and the rapture. You can set yourself up to win at the game of life. Become familiar with the laws of the universe. You have infinite potential. You can influence reality. Quantum growth and connection explores success strategies, power principles, relationship rescue, and the quantum field.